Hello all, Sique here, and welcome back to the path to Unpunishable. First of all, when I'm recording this, the Kickstarter has ended and we have made our funding goal with a little bit over, and I want to thank you so very much for believing in this project and supporting it the way you did. And with that, let's go on to card 16, the compass. I want to open this to say, yes, I am going to talk about the lens more explicitly, but not as a requirement. I want to talk about the lens as a recommendation, because what the compass is and what the lens is for me is a moral compass. It is the rules to which, when I don't have enough information, what do I go by? Because there are moments in life when the world kind of opens up wide and nothing is assigned anymore. There's no schedule, no actual path that you can see. I mean, there's a way to go somewhere, but there's no marked path and no obvious step. I remember the first time I truly felt this was the morning after, it was the first day of school after I had graduated. I had graduated the May before, had summertime, it was wonderful, everybody was outside, and then September came, and that first day I woke up and I didn't need to go anywhere. I just didn't need to go anywhere. I didn't need to go to a job or anything like that. Watching my brothers leave to school and watching folks who were younger than me have to get up, it was disorienting. And because after 12 years of structure, I had time, but I didn't have orientation, if that makes sense. I felt it again after years and years and decades later when I entered indie publishing, where every direction was possible and none of it was marked. It was literally the Wild West. And what saved me in both of these moments was not knowing where to go, but knowing what mattered to me. You're standing at a crossroads without signs. The only reliable tool you have sometimes isn't a map, it's a compass. Because it's with the compass that you make the map, if that makes sense. And why I believe the compass matters is because freedom without orientation is destabilizing. When the structures fall away, when the things you believe you realize were lies, people often mistake urgency for direction and going in any direction as progress. This card appears in that space where external rules, they don't apply anymore, and the internal ones have not been named, right? We talked about this a few cards ago. After the stone spine teaches you how to remain upright under pressure, and then you have the ink truth, which asks you to accept what you know now. The compass itself answers the next question, and it's usually a quieter one. How will you move when no one is telling you what comes next? Survival can carry you through crisis, but it cannot choose for you. And without an explicit internal compass, you turn hard. You use strength to bop people over the head, and truth just becomes justification. You need to justify your actions, and both of those lead to either punishment when it comes to your strength or external validation, and we don't want that. You want a compass, and you need it to exist to prevent that drift. It isn't about instruction some more. It just, once again, orientation, knowing the right way to go. And those two examples that I was talking about before, it was an unassigned space, and I had the same lack of ease. I wasn't comfortable. And not that there was anything wrong. Nothing was actively threatening me. But the absence of the structure felt dangerous. I could go anywhere. I could become anything. And that kind of openness sounds like freedom, but without figuring out why, your why, and how you want to develop that, it becomes a different type of pressure. When I entered publishing, like I said, the landscape felt like the Wild West. There was endless options, all these trends, a lot of advice, and a lot of shortcuts. And I chased some, and I hit a whole lot of dead ends, right? And I learned quickly that having choice is not the same thing as having direction. What eventually steadied me was me deciding how I wanted to feel while working, how I wanted to treat people, and how I wanted to be treated and what I wouldn't tolerate in return. And if we go to how I built this in the Shaman States of America, hunters are taught that strength without a code turns protectors into threats. It turns well-meaning people into showboats and rogues and jumping out and doing all kinds of things that could harm people. I had this conversation with one of my co-writers who really had an issue with the fact that his character couldn't just jump out and there was a scene where they were at a Ren fair and then there were like frogmen and his character was going to go and hunt them, right? And it makes perfectly good sense because I have read it and he has read it and we've all read it in 100 different books. There's something happening and the guy who's like not involved with it at all just comes out and does that. Goes out and protects him, becomes a hero. And I shot it down quickly and hard and it kind of upset him and he couldn't understand it. And I had to remind him. Well, actually, I had to tell him for the first time. I don't know. I had to remind myself, I think, that what makes Shaman States different is this code that they go by and their structure for a reason. Not only that, but everybody in Shaman States of America has abilities. This isn't about someone who doesn't have abilities doing something heroic. It's how people who all have abilities organize themselves so there isn't chaos. How they're all looking in the right direction so things go smoothly, right? And what happens if you don't, if you let greed get a hold of you? Because not all monsters are born. Some are made when people decide that confusion, pain, power, those things entitle them to harm people. And I recognized that risk in myself, which is the reason why I wanted to write a story where greed and those things were the bad thing and looked down upon. And once I had that resilience and clarity, I could justify almost anything. Seriously. But the compass became the tool that stopped me from drifting into something I was not proud of. I could survive it, but it isn't the kind of life I wanted to live. A lot of people would see me as powerful, but I also wanted to sleep at night. So let's talk about the lens a little bit. When I talk about the lens, I'm talking about empathy, seeing people as human, truth, being honest with yourself, about yourself, the good and the bad, and seeing that with other people, seeing it clearly. A lot of times we have a hard time with those two because we want to do something that gives us power, gives us comfort, but to do that, we have to stop looking at people as people. For instance, with the murders that the ICE are committing, a lot of people are saying, America, this isn't the America I know. This is not what America is about. And those people who say that have a damper on their empathy because that's exactly what America has been. It just hasn't affected you. Now, in those two things, you have to have the empathy to see that other people this has happened to other people. Other humans have been affected. You may not have, but other people have. And the truth of it is that for a lot of years, white people have been taught that the suffering of black and brown people are lessons, are necessary for the folks to learn a lesson, but not something that is visited upon them. And that's changed. And the truth of it is now that there isn't a socio-ethnic, let me just say it again. Being white doesn't protect you anymore. You have to be rich. And that's a truth that's hard. And then there's kindness, which is what do you do once you have empathy and once you have truth? What is the correct way of acting? How do you act with accurate knowledge? Even though, and especially if it is at a loss to you, reputationally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And joy is the actual reward, the settledness, the calmness, the peace that you feel. And then anti-greed is knowing how much to take and how much to give away. And it's also personal responsibility and accountability. These things function as my compass rose. It doesn't tell me what to go, but it tells me which way is true. Empathy and kindness orient me towards humanity rather than dominance or seeking control. Truth demands that I see clearly and a line between what I know and how I act. Joy becomes the signal that I am moving in because it's peaceful and it's right, rather than I'm obligated to. And anti-greed prevents accumulation from replacing purpose. And this framework was drawn from the fruits of the Spirit, which was described in Galatians 5:22-23. And these things, the fruits of the Spirit, the lens is a distillation of the fruits of the Spirit. And it stands in direct contrast to the fruits of the flesh, where the flesh wants to pull towards reaction, entitlement, and justification. The lens insists on intention, right? And another thing I want to mention is I don't think you are required to look through the lens. And the lens in any other moral code isn't about moral perfection, right? This isn't about being perfect, and it never was, because we're not. And the Lord knows we're not. But it is about reducing self-deception. Stop lying to yourself. Because there's nothing external enforcing the behavior. Values become the only stabilizing force. And the lens for me exists so I can argue with myself honestly when every direction looks viable. It keeps me from mistaking motion, once again, from like in any direction for meaning and power, right? So what can the compass teach us? The compass teaches that values must be named before they're tested. Crisis, freedom, and opportunity all arrive faster than reflection. It really does. You need to slow down. And when structure disappears, that is to say, you get out of these situations where entitlement was pressed upon you and now you feel that freedom, instinct takes over unless something else is already in place. We instinctively want to go back to what we know. And that is not the goal here. We're not going backward along the path. This card asks you to articulate your own internal compass explicitly. Talk about, think about, and say out loud what you believe, why you believe it, and where you hope it takes you. And not in abstract ideals, but through lived boundaries. Where do you draw your lines? What will you not sacrifice, even when it benefits you? What behavior becomes unacceptable when you are tired, vindicated, or alone with your choices. The compass doesn't judge your answers. It only asks that you choose them while you are calm. Drift is rarely intentional. It happens when people postpone definition and let the circumstances decide for them. Direction requires commitment, right? And a compass is portable. You can carry it into conflict. You can carry it while you're creating something, negotiating, and while you're resting. It does not change with public opinion. It does not require consensus. It only requires honesty. So on the path to unpunishable, the compass marks the shift, once again, between reaction and intention. You are no longer defined solely by endurance or revelation. You are now accountable to how you move when nothing else is forcing you. And with that, punishment loses its leverage when your direction is internal and explicit. When you know where you're going and you validate yourself, people can't punish you. They can say something, they can make you feel hurt, but the recovery comes faster because you know that they are saying it to stop you, not necessarily because you're wrong, right? And you may still encounter consequences, opposition, and or loss. The compass doesn't prevent that. What it prevents is corrosion of your values, right? When your orientation is chosen rather than imposed, reward and fear kind of lose their power. They lose their ability to steer you, I should say. The compass promises coherence, and coherence is what makes a life that's difficult to manipulate or corrupt. And in the end, that's what we want. And so with that, I would like to leave you with this image. I want you to picture the compass in your hand, right? And the needle is settling, not because the world stopped shifting and moving, but because you've chosen where you stand and where you want to go. You have chosen your North Star. May your direction remain clear when the road is not. May your strength stay guided, your truth stay humane, and your joy stay intact. And when structure falls away again, as it always does, may you trust the compass you chose while you were still calm. Amen. Thank you again for your support. Thank you again for supporting the Kickstarter, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.